Hello, fellow rebel capitalists. Hope you're well. Breaking news, which is great news. The cerveza sickness could be over. I'm going to say it that way. And I want to emphasize it could be over. There are no certainties, definitely not this early, but the data is showing that pretty much everything that you would want to happen to turn the cerveza sickness from a pandemic into an endemic, or just meaning that the pandemic itself is really over. You turn the cerveza sickness into something that would be similar to what we've dealt with for a long, long time with the cold and flu and whatnot. In order to get that to happen, you would need something exactly like the new scariant. And I want to give a huge hat tip to my buddy Chris Martinson. We're going to go over one of his videos in a moment. If you haven't seen his video from last night, you have to check it out. It's regarding the scariant and the data. And obviously, Chris knows a lot more about this stuff than I do. I think he's been really a hero since this whole thing has started. And out of all the people that are out there in the mainstream media or in the alternative media space, I think he's the main person. I think he has offered the most detailed analysis, and he has remained, in my opinion, completely objective. And there's a lot of people in the space that I trust their opinion, but I don't think there's anyone in the space where I trust their opinion more than my good buddy Chris Martinson. So let's dive into the data. Before we do, one more. Actually, let's get over to this article from CNBC. And just want to remind everyone about the retraction yesterday. I know I had a couple comments on that. The Justin Trudeau video was complete fake news. It was taken out of context. I got duped, and I did a video on it. I took down the video. Unfortunately, the podcast still went live. So if you're listening on the podcast, we apologize. We tried to take it off the feed, and for whatever reason, it's not working. So in the future, obviously, I'll do my very best to make sure that something like this does not happen again. But if it does, I'm only human. I have no problem coming out saying that I was wrong, it was fake news, and do a retraction. On that note, let's get back into the good news of the day. And 3 new studies suggest the new scariant has lower hospitalization risk and is milder than the other scariants. So key points. The current studies indicate some really good, or something really good. And this is Ralph Renchez. I'm going to guess on that one. We'll call him Ralph. The professor of epidemiology at Hamburg University of Applied Sciences told CNBC Thursday. Research from South Africa suggests people with the new scariant are 80% less likely to be admitted to the hospitals. Now, keep in mind, there's a lot of variables there. They have a very low level of medicine rate, and they're also a very young population. And I've been to South Africa, and I've spent actually quite a bit of time there. I spent about 3 or 4 months there in Cape Town, and people there are a lot thinner than Americans and people in the UK and Australians, but definitely a lot thinner than Americans. And I know that sounds funny, but that is definitely a variable to take into consideration. The authors of these studies caution that this may be in part due to higher immunity. Okay, different variables. That's what I was talking about. And again, this is very preliminary stuff as far as these data. So I'm not sitting here making a prediction. I'm saying this could happen if the data proceed like we've seen over the past week. Then there's a high probability that this could be the end of the pandemic if we allow it to be the end of the pandemic. More on that in just a moment. So this new scariant, the hospitalization rate is far lower. So what these studies have shown is that you have a decoupling in the level of cases due to this scariant specifically. and the hospitalization rate. So normally you would see the case rate go like this, and then you would see the hospitalization rate and the death rate follow that same trajectory. Obviously, it wouldn't be the same number of people, but it would follow the same trajectory. With this scariant, you see the parabolic, I mean, literally just exploding straight up as far as the case number, but yet the hospitalization rate and so far the death rate barely goes up at all. And that's exactly what you want if you want to end this as a pandemic. You would want something that was highly, highly, highly transmissible, but yet something that was very, very mild. So, bam, it just rips through the system, through society, and it doesn't cause much damage. And then hopefully, and we'll have to see how this plays out, but hopefully, those people that get the uh, uh, we'll call it natural immunity from this scariant, this prevents them from getting it into the future. And then it's just a matter of psychology, and it's a matter of the mainstream media. It's a matter of how much power and control and authority they are willing to relinquish. Again, more on that in just a moment. Let's go over to Chris Martinson's YouTube, and I'm not going to go over the video, but this is an example. He pulls up this chart, and this is what I was referring to. So this is Denmark as an example, where you see the case count just skyrocket, really. But yet the let's see here, the average. It's hard for me to read this, but okay, the deaths is so the yellow line deaths, white line cases, and so you see this really go up and then kind of flat line, and hopefully it stays that way. We don't know yet. But then you see the cases just completely skyrocket. And again, this is what you would want to see if you're saying, how can we get this in the rearview mirror, so to speak? It's not that you eradicate the cerveza sickness, that it's not going away, but this becomes the dominant scariant, and it kind of pushes out all the other scariants. So this is what circulates, and the others are pretty much. It's weird because in a sense, it's doing what we had hoped the medicines would do in the first place. So now let's get on to the part where so we understand kind of what's happening in the data. This is all very, very good news. Hopefully it continues. Obviously, I'll be paying attention to this over the next couple weeks and just reporting to you guys what I find. But now we get to the part that's kind of bad news, and that we have to try to decide what the probabilities are of the politicians, the global elite, and these people that are in charge of the institutions. I'd throw them in the same bucket. What's the chances they let go of this crisis? You never let a good crisis go to waste, is their motto. So, what are the chances that they relinquish this power and authority that unfortunately we as a society have given them over the past 2 years? I mean, just you guys hopefully saw that video I did where we went over de Blasio and that interview that he gave with CNN, where he's just absolutely drunk on power. And he's just almost excited about the fact that he can take away people's paychecks or their livelihood. He's excited about the fact that he can force people into this position where they can't really live their lives the way they want to, that he's taking all of their joy and all of the fun that they have in life. He's taking that away from them. And you also saw this with the gal, the mayor in Chicago. We did that story yesterday, where she's just coming right out and saying that we are implementing these passports to make lives of the unmedicated as difficult as possible. I mean, she didn't say it exactly, but I'm paraphrasing. But she said basically, for the people who have chosen not to take the medicine, or the people who have disobeyed my orders, I'm going to make your life a living hell. That's basically the message. So then you've got to use some game theory there and say, okay, this person is a psychopath. And obviously they have an insatiable lust for power, control, and they want to do everything to micromanage your life. So what are the probabilities that they let this crisis go without putting up a fight. Let's move on to this next story from Zero Hedge. And this is Fauci. If your family member is unmedicated, tell them not to show up. He's talking about Christmas. I'll give him credit in the sense that takes balls. I mean, that takes balls to tell people, to tell their family members not to show up to Christmas. It's just unbelievable. And what's really unbelievable is that the media doesn't call him out on this. Like, whoa, time out here. Are you sure you should be telling that? I mean, that's a little extreme. It's staggering. And not, I think what's even more staggering is that there's people that actually listen to him. I mean, can you imagine someone watching CNN and Fauci coming out and saying this and then saying, "Oh my gosh, thank goodness Fauci opened up my eyes." And then you just going through a list of all the people that you invited over for Christmas Eve. And then you sit there and call every one of them, say, "Are you vaccinated? Are you vaccinated? Are you vaccinated? Are your kids vaccinated? Oof, boy. Are they vaccinated? Oh, you're not? Oh, unfortunately, I'm going to have to uninvite you to Christmas Eve. Yes, I know you could wear a mask, but that's just not going to cut it because I just watched Fauci and he said that I've got to tell you, you can't show up. So sorry. See you next year, Mom." That's what's most unbelievable to me, but let's keep going. So I guess he was asked, this was MSNBC. The host, Alicia Menendez, said, "If someone in your family has not taken the medicine, should you ask them not to show up?" And Fauci says, "Yes, I would do that." He said, "I think we're dealing with something serious enough. I think we are dealing with a serious enough situation right now that if there's an unmedicated person, I would say, I'm very sorry, but not this time. Maybe another time when this is all over." All righty then. That's the type of psychopath we're dealing with. And it's I want to be clear, it's not just Fauci. I mean, it's all these people that are in charge of these institutions. And one of the reasons I'm so hard on him, not necessarily just because he says things like this that are just unbelievably uh, over the top and not just unjustified, but inappropriate. I think it's not your job. I mean, I think that's what the correct response should be here. Is well, if it well, Alicia, I understand your question. This is difficult. I think every family needs to come to their own conclusion. This is something dangerous we're dealing with, but at the end of the day, I can't make that decision for individual family members. Something to that effect. But anyway, let's keep going here. And he says, "I think we're dealing with something serious." Well, really, because if we look at the data, we show that it's not very serious so far. And I know there's an argument that it's so transmittable that even though it's far, far, far more mild, the hospitalizations will explode as well and therefore cause capacity issues. I get it, but that's not what we're seeing so far in the data. And Fauci should know that. And he said, and he should also acknowledge it. Elsewhere in the interview, Fauci ominously warned that the unmedicated, this scariant is going to find you. And I want to read his full quote here because, again, we got to keep things in context. He said, "That's why I worry about people who refuse to get the medicine. When you're dealing with the cerveza sickness, When you are dealing with one that spreads so rapidly, you're unmedicated, the scariant is going to find you. And let's remember that pretty much all the numbers that I've seen, and Chris Martenson goes into this in great detail, shows that the scariant doesn't really care if you've had the medicine or not. The scariest is it's like Chris, it's the honey badger. This is definitely a honey badger from the standpoint of how transmittable it is. So it's showing that yes, there is a slight benefit in the numbers as far as hospitalizations and whatnot, but as far as the cases, it's from the studies. A lot of the studies that I looked into last night, there's actually a disproportionate amount of people who have the medicine that are actually testing positive for this new scariant. As an example, in Ontario, 76% roughly of adults have the medicine, when 80% of the new cases are from of the new scariant are from those individuals. So there's I understand that the medicine can add benefits, but you've got to look at things in their totality. You can't just look at, okay, well, this is the benefit and ignore everything else. Coming to the conclusion, which he's trying to come to right now, saying that even with this new scariant, this is a pandemic of the unmedicated. And that's what he's trying to say here. And that's my point. Not so right now. And if you're trying to imply that, it's being disingenuous. And he says the scariant is going to find you. And you notice he says if you are unmedicated. No, the scariant can find you regardless. I mean, this is basic stuff. And I know there will be a lot of people that will get seriously ill if you are unmedicated. Wrong. Yes, there will people that will get seriously ill if they're medicated, but there are also a lot. As look at the percentages of people that will get seriously ill if they are medicated. And I'm not saying a lot of people in relationship to the total amount who test positive. I'm saying a lot as far as the percentage of people who actually do get seriously ill. That's the reason why, despite the I'm not sure what this is, reluctance, basically, on the part of many people to get the medicine. And again, see, what's really weird about this quote, and maybe you've noticed it, is how many times, I mean, this is like 2 sentences. Like, how on earth can you get the word medicated or unmedicated into 2 sentences that many times? Like, he's got it in here like 6 or 7 times. And what's very bizarre to me is this is like how you hypnotize someone. You ever see those TV commercials that showed how they would use like subliminal messaging and they would just say the word like they'd be saying a normal sentence and then they just drop that word in there and they drop it in again and drop it in again and drop it in again, and drop it in again. It's just very eerie and bizarre that he like I'll try to read it straight through to you'll see what I'm saying here. That's why I worry about the people who refuse to get the medicine. When you're dealing with the cerveza sickness, when you're dealing with the spread so rapidly, if you're unmedicated, the virus is going to find you. And I know there will be a lot of people who will get seriously ill if they're unmedicated. That's the reason why, despite the reluctance on the part of so many people to get medicated, we continue to encourage them, particularly in the context of this new scariant, to please get medicated. If you haven't been medicated, get your extra medication. Are you kidding me? Wow. So I think what we can safely conclude is that Fauci is going to completely ignore the data here, and he is going to double, triple, quadruple down on essentially what is fear mongering. And so then the next question would be why? As we've said so many times on this channel, This, among many other things, proves that this has nothing to do about health. It has nothing to do about safety. It has nothing to do about quote unquote science. This has everything to do with power, control, uh, potentially profits, conditioning you, maybe all of the above. And so that's the question. The data right now, and I want to be very clear, who knows how it plays out. But as of right now, it's looking like this new scariant could be the end of the pandemic. But then the next question that we have to think through are what are the probabilities that the global elite, the central planners, and the people in charge of these institutions allow it to be the end of the pandemic. They've got the greatest crisis they could ever wish for that was just delivered to them on a silver platter, eerily so. And this has allowed them to usurp a tremendous amount of control and power. Are they going to give it back? And if the answer is no, then how do they go about that if even the mainstream media starts reporting that this new scariant is the end of the pandemic? And you say, George, that'll never happen. It actually, I'd be the first person to say that, but I went through my news feed this morning, and there's actually a lot of articles in the mainstream media with publications that I never thought would say this, that actually are coming out and implying that this could be true. The first that comes to mind is The Atlantic. I saw a story when I was working out this morning. I saw a story from The Atlantic that was saying this very same thing. And also, I want to remind all of you how I have been wrong in the past. If you go back to the beginning of 2021, this is when all the grocery stores were making it mandatory that you wear a mask inside. Whole Foods, Trader, but all the grocery stores were, even Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, and this was even in Arizona. And so I thought back then, I said this many times, that there's no way that maybe Walmart might, but there's no way a place like Whole Foods or Trader Joe's will ever get rid of their internal mask mandate or their mask rule that you have to wear one inside the store. Because what would have to happen for them to do away with that rule is that the Faucis of the world would have to come out and say, okay, you don't need to wear masks anymore. Well, that, what's interesting is I think that through, just going through that timeline, it was actually a mistake that they made that gave all the private businesses a window of opportunity to say, okay, we're done. No more mask mandate. Because remember what happened is they came out with the medicines. So the CDC, Walensky, and everyone was saying, oh, great, you got to go out there, get the medicine. And if you get the medicine, you don't have to wear a mask. That was kind of the carrot in front of the horse. And then remember, Walensky came out with the CDC and said, okay, no, if you're medicated, no more masks. Yay. And so the Whole Foods and the Trader Joe's of the world said, okay, great, we're done with the mask mandates. No more mask rules. Yeah, and I remember when Walmart was the first one to come out and say, okay, no more mask mandates. Because I remember I was in Florida at the time. I remember it like it was yesterday. And but then remember, like a week and a half later, maybe 2 weeks later, Walensky comes back out and says, oh, sorry. Yep, the data has changed. And now you definitely need to wear a mask. In fact, you should wear like 4 or 5 masks, even if you've had the medicine. It completely backpedals, right? But what did Whole Foods do? I mean, I don't know what they did in your area, but the Whole Foods that I go to here in Phoenix, they did not re-implement the mask mandate. So, and I was wrong. I thought they would just go along with whatever the CDC said. So, and I was very happy to be wrong. So maybe, just looking at the glass half full, that maybe my intuition about the media continuing to latch onto this and just play and just back the narrative of the central planners, maybe I'm wrong there too. Maybe they'll come out once the evidence is so overwhelming, the media can't really, they can only spin it so much. And then they have to kind of capitulate and say, fine, okay, we'll go ahead and report the news, but just for this one time. And we'll go back to our propaganda. So we'll have to see how it plays out. But the bottom line is I think this could be some great news going into the Christmas holiday. So, guys, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And always remember to stand up for freedom, liberty, free market capitalism. We'll see you on the next video.